Hello, my name is Marcos and I'm a vegan from Córdoba, Argentina. First of all, for those of you who don't know me, I'm not only a vegan, but I also recommend a high-carb, whole foods, plant-based diet for the treatment and reversal of the most common chronic diseases, such as type 2 diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and so forth. Although I believe high-carb vegan is a good and effective approach, I also believe that it's not the only way. In this video, I'm gonna give you my 2 cents about this great job made by Cyrus Gambata, aka Mangoman, for plant-based news about ketogenic diets.
Let's face it, the ketogenic diet is arguably the most popular dietary trend in our world today.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that ketogenic diets are the most popular dietary trend. Low-carb diets as a whole are very popular, but nothing compares with the popularity of plant-based diets. Veganism is the most trendy thing of the decade. So I think we're kind of oversized bullies when we're bashing ketogenic community.
When you eat a ketogenic diet, your muscles and liver switch from oxidizing glucose as their primary fuel to fatty acids as their primary fuel. And in order to withstand a very low carbohydrate intake, your liver manufactures ketone bodies as an emergency backup fuel for your brain when in the state of ketosis.
Yeah, that is correct, but you're not mentioning one very important process that occurs during ketosis. Gluconeogenesis is another important metabolic function of the liver, converting amino acids, lactate, glycerol, and pyruvate into glucose. Why this is so important? Because there are certain functions that our brain cells can only perform with glucose. Even in ketosis, our brain needs 25% of calories from glucose, and 30 grams of dietary carbohydrates are not even close to that daily requirement.
Now, insulin triggers macronutrient uptake in this order. Priority number 1, insulin transports glucose into tissues to either be burned for energy or to be stored as glycogen for later use. Priority number 2, insulin transports fatty acids into tissues to be immediately burned for energy or to be stored as triglyceride for later use.
Yeah, well, it is true that insulin can get fatty acids into muscle cells. The problem is that insulin decreases the rate of fatty acid oxidation for its use. There is another hormone secreted also by the pancreas called glucagon. This hormone is the antagonist of insulin, and one of its primary roles, besides glycogen degradation in the liver, is to get fatty acids into muscle tissues to be used as fuel. You never mentioned glucagon, and it's way too important in order to understand the ketogenic process.
Technically speaking, when you eat carbohydrate-rich food, your blood glucose will rise. Furthermore, reducing your carbohydrate intake will keep your blood glucose more stable. For these reasons, ketogenic dieters maintain a total carbohydrate intake less than 30 grams per day, representing less than 10% of total calories on average.
No, that is not the reason why ketogenic dieters propose less than 10% of carbs in the diet. The reason is because in order to produce ketone bodies, first, you must force your liver to produce its own glucose via gluconeogenesis. But to do so, your liver needs one critical Krebs cycle intermediate called oxaloacetate. In the liver, oxaloacetate will be used up to create glucose, and acetyl coenzyme A from fatty acid oxidation will go to another pathway, that is ketogenesis, the synthesis of ketone bodies. The real purpose of ketosis is to transform fatty acids into ketone bodies for its use.
The primary reason why your blood glucose remains flat is because of the near absence of carbohydrate-rich foods. In this way, eating a high-fat diet is very effective at flatlining your blood glucose because carbohydrates are kept below 30 grams per day. As long as you avoid carbohydrate-rich foods, your blood glucose is likely to stay very stable. But the minute you choose to eat carbohydrate-rich foods such as a banana, a potato, a bowl of quinoa, your blood glucose is likely to increase significantly due to a hidden state of fatty acid-induced insulin resistance.
I know some ketogenic dieters, and believe me, they are not stupid. They know they just can't eat high-carb foods like that. They also know ketosis is not forever. Eventually, it must stop. But they don't just stuff their face with carbs. By increasing the ratio of carbs, ketosis is no longer possible, but the diet remains high-fat. And they use those fatty acids directly via beta oxidation to Krebs cycle, and those dietary carbs they just added are used for brain supply without the need of gluconeogenesis. And you can do this as a vegan, much easier than a vegan ketogenic diet, which, by the way, is very difficult to achieve and maintain.
It's necessary to go back to basic biochemistry principles and understand that the vast majority of people who develop insulin resistance do so by eating a diet containing large amounts of dietary fat, as we discussed earlier. Now, the research world has known this for more than 85 years. This was first established in the 1930s by the pioneering work of Drs. Rabinowitz and Himsworth, then further proven by Dr. Kempner in the 1950s and by Dr. Anderson in the 1970s. Despite this, the cause of insulin resistance and carbohydrate intolerance remains one of the most debated subjects in the world of diabetes even today.
Maybe because insulin resistance is an issue much more complex than you think. There are literally thousands of studies about insulin resistance. Those you just mentioned are just a few. There is no such thing as the only cause for insulin resistance. There are many more. I strongly recommend this lecture by Slashen Kumar and Stephen O'Reilly called Insulin Resistance, Insulin Action and Its Disturbances in Disease, with more than 600 pages. A huge meta-analysis with thousands of studies reviewed.
The dominoes are arranged in this order. Number 1, you eat a diet containing dietary fat greater than about 15% of total calories. Number 2, you go and eat a banana, a potato, or a bowl of rice and check your blood glucose 2 hours later to find that your blood glucose meter reads a high number like 246.
This is not how insulin resistance works. There are too many things you are just not considering there. First, not all fats are the same. Polyunsaturated fats are actually beneficial for insulin sensitivity. Secondly, more than 15% of dietary fat does not necessarily translate into ectopic accumulation of fat. You can isolate carbs from fat. You can do intermittent fasting with 30 and even 40% of vegetable fats and still not having ectopic accumulation of fat. There are two kinds of ectopic accumulation. You have intramyocellular lipids, which means fat accumulation inside the muscle cells, and central accumulation of fat. That's fat storage at the abdominal area. That fat secretes certain substances such as leptin, resistin, adipopectin that can interfere with insulin sensitivity. You should also check out the Randolph hypothesis about non-esterified fatty acids and protein kinase C, which also interferes with insulin sensitivity. Cyrus, I'm not trying to bash you, but when you started your video, you said this.
In this video, we'll go into detail about the truth underlying ketosis and refute many common statements backed by misleading science, incorrect biochemistry, and a fundamental lack of understanding of human biology.
Maybe your understanding of biochemistry is not incorrect, but it's so incomplete that for me it's clear that you're not looking at the whole picture. You're way too dogmatic with this. High carb, low fat, whole foods, plant-based is a good answer to this problem, but it's not the only one, and it doesn't work every time.
Now, the ketogenic world is quick to point out that there is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate, in contrast to required nutrients like essential fatty acids and essential amino acids. While this statement is technically true, labeling glucose as a non-essential carbohydrate implies that there is no use for glucose in the human body.
No, that is not what they say.
They say carbs are not essential because our body can create glucose from another macros.
Our minimum daily requirement for carbohydrates is 0. We have essential amino acids, those are proteins, Essential fatty acids, but nope, no essential carb. A nutrient is essential if we have to have it to function, and we can't make it from something else. We make glucose, plenty of it, all the time. It's called gluconeogenesis.
But ketogenic dieters never said such thing as there is no use for carbohydrates. That's ridiculous. They reckon the importance of glucose, but you must reckon that dietary carbohydrates are not essential to get it.
People who eat low carbohydrate diets die sooner and suffer from more disease in the long term. If that's not enough to dissuade you from eating a low carbohydrate diet, I'm not sure what is. Therefore, labeling carbohydrates as non-essential is not only factually inaccurate, it results in a wide variety of chronic health conditions that may ultimately shorten your lifespan, decrease your quality of life, and accelerate your risk for chronic disease.
Yeah, I agree with you there. But the main reason ketogenic and low-carb diets are detrimental in the long term is not that simple. Low-carb dieters rely on gluconeogenesis for their minimum glucose supply. But gluconeogenesis means mostly amino acids converted into glucose.
When you convert an amino acid into glucose, the amino group is discarded into two toxic substances called urea and ammonia. Our kidneys can handle them for a while, but not forever. If you do this for a long period of time, your kidneys will eventually fail, with all those disastrous outcomes you just mentioned.
Ketogenic dieters often report very low fasting insulin levels, then draw the conclusion that their insulin sensitivity has increased. This could not be farther from the truth. The only way to actually measure your insulin sensitivity is to utilize a glucose challenge.
There is a study of the Journal of American Medical Association about this. You're right about this. Ketogenic diets does not improve insulin sensitivity, but a slow return into glucose metabolism is possible and maybe easier after all of that weight loss.
Ketosis misconception number 6. Low carbohydrate diets are not high protein diets.
Well, it depends on the guru we are dealing with. There's a middle ground between ketogenic diets and paleo and Atkins diets. Some keto dieters recommend too much protein. Either way, you're right. Ketogenic diets rely on gluconeogenesis, and excess proteins is a requirement to do so.
While these studies are helpful at assessing the short-term benefits of ketosis, they fail to document the long-term effects of a ketogenic diet. A classic example of this is a paper that was published in 2017 documenting the results of 10 weeks of a ketogenic diet in 262 patients following a diet containing less than 30 grams of carbohydrate per day and an average of 175 grams of protein per day. Now, the researchers document how 10 weeks of ketosis resulted in an average A1C decrease of 1%, an average weight loss of 7.2%, and how more than 56% of participants reduced their need for oral medication.
Just look at those names: Sarah Holberg, Jeff Volek, Stephen Finney.
Those are huge names in the ketogenic community, and they are all gathered now in a coven named Virta Health. Do you remember this guy? He's no longer a scientific chief at the ADA. He is now an advisor at Virta. They have this crazy mission to reverse 100 million cases of type 2 diabetes by the year 2025. And yeah, this study is a huge pile of crap. No randomized, meaning there's no control group. No follow-up afterwards. It's just bullshit corporate propaganda for Virta Health. I made a video once for Sarah Holberg. She mentioned this study, and I couldn't find it anywhere. There were no signs of it at PubMed, JAMA, British Journal, or even The Lancet. Obviously, because it's a piece of shit. Cyrus, to summarize, I want you to understand why I did this video for you. You have very good intentions, you have a lot of knowledge, but your video about ketogenic diet is not good enough. I know how ketogenic dieters think, and they can easily debunk your video. Just look at this guy. He's not even a big name in the ketogenic community, and he's right about a lot of things. Ketogenic diets are cyclic. Yes, they can be moderate in protein, but What the fuck is mean with drops sugar? How? The cycling in and out just like our ancestors did. Some appeal to nature fallacy there. Typical. The final message is this. High carb, low fat, whole foods, plant-based is not the only way. There is another way. And not necessarily vegan ketogenic or eco-Atkins. I've been working on a diet with intermittent fasting and high vegetable fat meals at the beginning of the feeding window, then a high carb meal at the end of it. I call it vegan grass protocol. By doing this, your muscle cells gets used to use both macros, fatty acids via beta oxidation to Krebs cycle, and glucose via glycolysis to Krebs cycle. It's like the best of both worlds, and it's vegan, no ketosis involved, no gluconeogenesis involved. Just think about it, okay? Now, if you like this video, give me some thumbs up, leave a comment, don't subscribe because this channel is not in English, and as always, see you next video. Thanks.